Hang in there, it is!
Smylie Kaufman for 61. Wow.
I'm Smylie Kaufman, and this is The Smylie Show.
We are back with another FedEx Cup playoffs edition of The Smylie Show. Back with another top-tier location here. First tee at the newly restored East Lake Golf Club here for the Tour Championship. And Smylie, how we feeling, man? You got a little late last night, a little 2 a.m. into the hotel.
Yes. ATL baggage claim. Not necessarily happy with you, nor is Kevin Kisner or Sung JM or Ben On or Matthew Pavon. And Harry Diamond. None happy with the ATL baggage claim. It was quite the ordeal last night. But listen, we're not here to complain about the baggage claim. I think everybody's had their experiences. It just, pretty long week, but a fantastic week. I think anytime Sunday night, you just want it to be seamless just to get to your next destination, and not quite as seamless as we'd hoped.
We've been hard on some airlines and some airports on the show. I think all fair stuff. And last night that's more fair criticism. It's constructive feedback. All right.
Yes.
We know you can do a better job at the Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, I think is what it is. Yeah.
We have got to figure out how to get Sung JM on this podcast.
Would love that.
He does not speak very good English. Like, even talking to Willie Wilcox, his caddy, used to play on the PGA Tour, he said he has no idea what he's like socially. Like, he's been working for him for how long now? Maybe a year or two?
Yeah, about a year plus, yeah.
And, I was like, what's y'all's, communication like? He's like, it's just all numbers, clubs. And he said, if he asked me what he's like socially, I'd say I have no idea. I'm like, how is it even possible? Even in a different language, I think I could be able to tell if someone's, goofy serious or what their hobbies are. Yeah. But I just thought it was hysterical. But his timepiece that he had on his wrist, whew,
it's working with a little something there.
My God, I think he likes watches based on what I saw.
I'm great with a translator interview. Like, we just talked about, let's get Hideki here with a translator and a stack of pancakes. We can make all this happen.
Yeah.
I mean, this is it'll be a multilingual show.
Yeah.
We're not a math show. We're not a geography show. We could be a linguistic show.
Yes. Big words.
Could be a lot of big words in there. We got to get into that finish, Castle Pines, but first, foremost, I've got a very serious statement I need to issue here.
Okay.
Stemming from last week's show. So I'm just going to look very seriously into that camera over there, just down barrel, get my prepared statement ready here. Last week on this show, I asked Sepp Straka for his medal podium of Taylor Swift songs. And in my haste to prepare, I failed to list my own podium. A clear and gross oversight. I can't even read my own statement. This is going great. I'd like to offer a sincere apology to our audience in addition to my Swift podium, which is as follows. Bronze medal, Daylight from her album Lover. Silver medal, Invisible String from Folklore. And for the gold medal, Wildest Dreams from 1989.
It's a good list.
You like that?
It's a good list.
Do you want to make any amendments to your own podium?
Yeah, the bronze. I would have probably actually kept my bronze the same with the one, but then I would have either Wildest Dreams probably would have slipped in there, or Delicate as the. I would have probably gotten August out, and that would have been number 4, and then I would have probably had either Delicate or Wildest Dreams as the silver.
A lot of people liked your August inclusion in your podium.
I just re-listened to it, and the one is, I think, the best first. I think it's the first song in the Folklore album, but I don't even want to get there. We're too deep. We're gone too much.
We're deep. I just all I need to do is issue the statement. The statement's been issued. My podium's out there. Take that. Do with it what you will. We may have some off-season Taylor Swift podium discussions in the works with some special guests.
Yes,
we'll get there when we get there. But that's settled now. So with that said, we can kind of get into the golf tournament itself, which was won in pretty exciting fashion by Keegan Bradley. And I think the place that's where we're starting is I just love this venue. I thought Castle Pines was wonderfully unique. I thought the elevation change posed a lot of questions that were not easily solvable. As we saw for both guys in that final pairing on Sunday with some, carrying it a little too far, carrying it a little too short. I mean, really the last two groups, you're falling around Ludwig. He was having similar, difficulties getting his numbers right. And I know it's a rotational system, and I guess we'll get there every third year if this sort of rotation holds, but I thought it was a fantastic, championship test and cool to see it at altitude. Cool to see something a little different in that area.
You know, the Castle Pines, beautiful. We were there. You were there for 3 or 4 days. You got to experience what type of property this place was, and aesthetically beautiful was like where you had to start. I mean, this is like the first place you would want to join if you had an opportunity. It's like, hey, we'd love to have you as a member. I'd be like, yes. Where do I sign? The men's.
Does it come with one of those houses that's on the drive-in?
I wish, because those houses are unreal on this golf course.
Nice.
The inside the clubhouse, the grill room with where the locker room is, one of the best I've ever seen. But the golf course, I think that to me was, obviously we cover golf every week, and some weeks, the golf course is a storyline. Some weeks it isn't, and this week it was. And I think it's the conditions, right? When you have elevation that can be up or down 10 to 12 yards, up or down on a shot, and then you throw in altitude, which was at times 5%, sometimes 15%, most of the time right around 10. And then you have really like strategic penalty areas out on this golf course that made angles really tricky, to where, you really had to be on one side of the fairway to not be worried about a penalty area to where you could shape something in. And that kind of goes to shaping was difficult. And then you have firm greens. So your landing areas, although they looked large, by the weekend were so small, because anytime you were either downwind or you didn't have a good angle or playing from the heavy rough that they had, it just had everything. I think when we talk about, we're going to get into just USGA talk here a little later in this episode, but when we talk about just the rollback and just how there's different things that we can do to golf courses to make them more challenging, like do we need to make them longer? Well, this golf course just proved, as long as you have rough and firm conditions, 12 under to me was a hell of a tournament by Keegan Bradley, because I saw every shot in the fairway from inside 160 yards, which guys were hitting wedges from 160. I've never seen players just stand over shots just being more confused on what to do.
Yeah, and I thought, in contrast to some courses you see where it requires a birdie to get it done at the last, this week it was like, hold on for dear life and hope you can make a par.
Exactly.
And we saw, even with some guys around that top 30 line to get here this week to the Tour Championship, where Brian Harman, 29th entering the week, makes double at the last to miss out, finish 31st on that list. And, obviously heartbreaking fashion for Harman, but just showing you how the drama can play out on sort of both sides of things, where that hole was a beast playing up the hill.
Oh my God, it's so hard.
The rough, the number of calculations.
Firm.
I mean, if you're listening to some of these caddies go through, okay, here's what the number is. Here's what the number is elevation adjusted. Here's adjusted for wind. Here's adjusted for rough.
Caddies, on-course reporters.
Yes, that's right.
I had a headache at the end of the day trying to do all this math.
Not a math pod, but you have to be a math guy out there this week.
The shots, like just real quickly, the shot that I kept on seeing guys struggle with were wedges. And
yes,
you got to play out at Plum Creek down the road, and you kind of experienced a little bit. It was not nearly as firm, the angle's not nearly as tight, but players could not compress the ball enough to get enough height and enough spin. So it was like playing golf like you're on the moon. It felt like as soon as you hit it, the ball was just floating in space, no spin. Even if you had a full lob wedge, if you had any downwind or if the pin was on the front of the green or tucked at all, it just felt like you had no chance. Like I watched Alex Noren hit 4 wedges yesterday that landed on the green, and the second bounce was over the green. And these balls are landing in the middle of the green. It just was absurd.
Well, that's so interesting, too, because differing from a place like Scotland where part of it is using the ground game a little bit. Like, it's going to release and roll.
There's no run-ups here.
You can't, exactly.
There's
so it's
no
like
run-ups.
there's no real play to, like, land it and try to trundle it on. But if you land it on, see you later.
It was too firm on the weekend.
You think so, yeah.
It was too firm on the weekend.
Saturday was brutal when you factor in the wind as well.
The gusty winds, they didn't have that as much the first couple days, I don't think. I know Friday, I take that back. Thursday was definitely a little wind. Friday was really calm. Saturday, Sunday, definitely gustier winds. And when you throw wind on top of that, it dries out the golf course. Just was brutal.
I thought no better was there an illustration of the importance of a caddy than Keegan's approach on 17 on Sunday.
Who did we just see?
Scottie Vail.
We just saw Scottie
the
Vail.
Man, the myth, the legend. I thought, to me, and I know there were a countless number of these caddy conversations out there this week, but to hear the full audio of that conversation, they're going back and forth on numbers, and as Keegan's over that ball, Scottie calls him off real quick at the last minute. Says, "Let me just look at my yardage book from yesterday, see what you hit here." I think the number was almost identical because he was giving him 222. He looks at it. It was 225 yesterday. He hit a perfect 5-iron. He says, "Keegan, that's it. It's a perfect 5-iron." Knocks it close. Leaves the eagle putt a little bit short, but a nice safe tap in for birdie that more or less wins him that tournament. I thought that was phenomenally done by Scott Vail.
It sure was, and two things I really loved about that. First, what you mentioned about the number that he gave, referring back to the day before. That recall is so important for a player to have confidence, because I do that all the time when looking at the day before, if guys had similar numbers, to try to refer to, okay, well, yesterday they had this number, they hit this shot, this should be comfortable for them. Just Scottie's mind, with all the numbers, walking up that massive hill, and just to be that sharp on the 71st hole was excellent caddying. So definitely credit to Scottie for helping him out there. If your name is Scott at all, you're going to be Scottie on this pod, by the way. So
you have Scottie Scheffler, you have Adam Scott that people often call Scottie, you got Scottie Vail.
If you have any Scott in your name, you're going to be Scottie.
You're Scottie.
But the second thing, the execution by Keegan on that shot, you saw, countless guys not be able to hold that green just with that, how uphill you're hitting it and the landing angle that it's coming in on is not going to be high. But what I love from Keegan that I felt like more people should have done this week, when anytime players had shots back into the wind or a forced carry, I think they felt like they needed to just play knockdown shots or just not get it up into the air because they were worried about, getting up in there, is he going to get hit by the wind or, just leaving it up to the conditions. And I loved how Keegan with that 5-iron hoisted it. I didn't see enough guys try to hoist shots this week because they're worried about the higher you hit it, the longer it stays in the air and the further it could go. And the fact that he was able to get it up in the air with a long iron, which many guys, they're hitting flat long irons. So he gets it up in the air and lands it in a perfect spot and has a 15-footer for eagle that basically gave him the cushion to where he could just wag a 3.5-footer on 18 and win by 1.
I heard Robert Dameron talking about this on PGA Tour Radio last night of just coming in the week. He really liked Keegan at this venue because he is a high ball hitter. You can take advantage of things like the elevation and, obviously the wind is a factor where you don't always want to hit a high in the wind, but he obviously did a great job of
high.
managing
That's a great
it.
point.
And
my initial pick for the week was Morikawa, if you watched our show last week. And the reason why I took him, he's not the highest ball hitter, but I felt like he spins the golf ball a ton, which I felt like guys that had more control over their golf ball in drier conditions at altitude, I felt like we're going to be able to control their ball a little bit more around this property. But what I didn't factor were guys that could spin it and hit it high. And Keegan fits that category. He's in that low 170s ball speed, always hits the center of the face. I think Fax said yesterday on air is that from a height standpoint, he's one of the highest drivers of the golf ball on tour. And I know that's not wedges, but still, I think that has a lot to do with a guy that can get it up in the air. And obviously that it was a golf course that he was able to, pick it apart at times and play patient to maybe the greens were a little bigger for him.
So you had a wild week trying to calculate math, trying to adjust for all these things, but it wasn't only that because you had a nosebleed on your hands on Saturday.
I never had a nosebleed.
You
by
didn't
the
have
way.
one.
That was huge.
That's a shocker.
That reverse cash.
That was a good little reverse jinx action there. I also love that as a nosebleed sufferer, the first thing you did when Ludwig started, bleeding a little bit from the nose was, let me get my phone out. Let me take a picture of you.
Yeah, he came up and we're laughing about it. And the picture is hilarious because looking back, I thought he was going to be, smiling and giggling. And he was actually further, not even close to doing that. He was very serious. And he's like, why are you taking this picture? But we were very much so laughing before this.
That's amazing.
So I got to start.
A very dry Swedish.
All right, so this is the first hole on Saturday. I'm with Alex Noren and Ludwig Oberg, and it's humming Saturday to start this round. Like wind is blowing, And I get to the top, the first tee. It's the highest point on the property.
Mm-hmm.
And for an NBC walker, our producer has us go up to the starter, so the person that's going to be standing here all week and announcing the players on the first tee. They have us go up, introduce ourselves, and say, hey, we're going to cue you for when we want you to announce the group. Most of the time, let's say the tee time's 11:25. It'll be right at 11:25. I'll just tap you on the shoulder. And then, Charlie, you go on the tee from Sweden, Ludvig Åberg. And so I do this most weekends on NBC. It's something that you probably have no idea happens, but it does. The wildest thing happened this week. I am on the first tee. I introduce myself to the guy. I say, hey, the 11:25 group, I'm going to cue you, and you can start right after. He's like, great, just had somebody else do it. In the group in front of you, no problems. So I'm standing right there. It's 11:24 with 45 seconds left. And as like the clock is ticking, we get to 11:25, and he's like staring forward, kind of just waiting for me to tap him. And we're coming at a commercial break. So if anything, we're going to be about 20 seconds past is kind of what I'm thinking it's going to be. And all of a sudden, I'm standing there, and out of the peripheral corner of my eye, I see a 20-something-year-old kid come up and tap the guy on the shoulder and say something. And the starter doesn't turn around and says, next on the tee from Sweden, Ludvig Åberg. And all in my ear at this time, our producer, it says, all right, throw it to the first tee. This is about 10 seconds after the tap. And he says, Smylie, cue him. And at this point, I go back and I ask the guy who just tapped him on the shoulder, I was like, are you cueing the guy? And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, I'm supposed to tap him on the shoulder. He's like, what'd you just do? And he said, I just asked if he wanted a water.
So the guy's so locked in.
The water
He's
is
like a trained
literally
horse.
right here. And the guy taps him on the shoulder within the only time period
He can't be
that
tapping
he
him on
can't
the
be
shoulder.
tapped on the shoulder. So he announced on the tee because
Did you have him re-rack it?
the only window that this could have gone wrong is from 11:25 to 11:25 and 30 seconds. And he just happens
amazing.
to tap him on the shoulder
Pick
in that
that one.
time. And so after I say to the guy about the water, I come back to the guy because like Ludvig is just now putting like a tee in the ground, and my producer's like, what happened? And I was like, and then I asked the guy, I was like, can you do it again? And he was like, no. And I was like, probably a good idea, by the way. Glad he didn't do it again. And so I go back in our talk back, which is a way for me to talk to the producer.
Yes.
And I was like, you're not going to believe this. Somebody just tapped him on the shoulder right before this and asked if he wanted a water. And so my day started off so bizarre because we always joke that it's the most nervous we get all day.
Yeah, just to like
make
the
sure
starter.
the cue is right. Because we had a story of Nota Begay, same deal. They throw it on the first tee, and Nota cue him, and Nota didn't know he was cueing his group, and he's in the middle of the fairway. And so he's just like jumping up and down, like just like trying to figure out how to cue the group. So that happens, and then so I'm laughing, telling Ludvig and Alex Noren the story walking down the first fairway, and then we get up to the green, and Ludvig has this nosebleed. But
Where does it start? Because like I'm trying
it started like while he's walking up to the green, but in my ear at this time, Adam Scott and Keegan Bradley's group are teeing off.
hits it out of bounds.
And Adam hits it out of bounds, and they can't
Yeah.
tell if it's OB. And I
remember
could
you were
see
trying to tell him
that it's out of
Yeah.
bounds. So I'd been a part of the water fiasco with the starter, the nosebleed incident, and then I called an OB shot from a
leader.
group I wasn't even in.
That's
And not
amazing.
knowing if it was out of bounds or not, just seeing the guy signal.
Yeah.
So I guess I kind of made up for the blunder.
That's right. You got one back.
So the day and then really that whole day on Saturday was just bizarre. Just a bizarre day because Alex Noren was 3 over through 4. Ludvig was 3 under through 4.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, he was beating him by 7 shots. And then Alex Noren, I believe, tied him or beat him on the day. So it was just a crazy group.
Well, and that wasn't all for your craziness on the weekend, because then the next day you had two groups. The group you went out with early, Scottie Scheffler, Matt Fitzpatrick. You were embroiled in the great driver crack.
What is
fiasco.
up with my beginning of the show? So I get there on Sunday.
Something about that high altitude, man.
And they're like, all right, we want you to just go out with Scottie Scheffler for like 3 holes before you get ready for your Sunday Ludwig Alex Norton group. I'm like, great, whatever. Matthew Fitzpatrick's got to basically shoot nothing to make it to the Tour Championship. Scottie Scheffler is kind of just same thing all week, just making pars, maybe a birdie here and there. And so I get to them on the 8th hole, and I watch Scottie tee off. And so I'm up in the fairway. He hits the fairway, and I'm like doing all my notes and stuff. And I turn back around, I see that Scottie Scheffler's still on the tee. And so I'm like, oh, I guess maybe Fitzy went to the bathroom or something, because it's been like at least 4 or 5 minutes. So I just figured that's what's going on. And so I'm just not thinking anything of it. Shit happens, if you will.
Yes, yes.
And this is when I figured out something had gone terribly wrong. And this was after watching Fitzy's tee shot. I mean, just a full quack hook right off the tee at 8. And I go back and I go to the guy who helps me with yardages, who hands me sticky notes on how far guys are, Drew Hennisley, who actually caddies out of this golf course here at Eastlake. He said he just spoke with Andres Gonzalez and said, because they were covering it with ESPN PGA Tour Live, and said that there was a driver fiasco with Fitzy, and that he was trying to say that his driver was cracked, and that there was a big argument. Scottie and Fitzy both felt like there was 100% a crack, and that he wanted to get it replaced, and he wasn't going to hit that driver. So after a long debate, if you've seen this, it lasted probably 2 holes. The debate between rules official and not just Fitzy but Scottie. And
it's very involved.
And from my view and standpoint, yes, Fitzy was definitely adamant about there was a crack in his driver, but I had a chance to watch Scottie.
Yeah.
He was very upset about that it wasn't going to get replaced. And to the point where, he was having long discussions walking up the fairway, complaining about how Fitzy should get a driver replaced. And I asked Scottie about it in the fairway on 9. I was like, how bad is it? He said, well, you could see it, you could feel it, and then we just saw it on 8T, his drive go 180 yards. So
do you think you hit the driver there just to prove a point there? Like, if you're going to make me hit this, I'll show you.
Well, I mean, you just don't know what's going to happen. I think, if there should be some type of eyeball test of, like, you hear, like, it's obviously cracked.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was a wild start to my day on Sunday, too.
Well, and that one is maybe worth discussing a little bit more, because I think objectively, nobody thinks that that's a good application of that rule. Understanding, like,
there's some people.
Well,
I'm not one of those people.
And neither am I. Here's what John Woodett put out a series of tweets that I think are. I think he also thinks that it was ridiculous the way this rule was applied, but just to get an understanding of why that was the decision that was arrived at. So I'll just read these in order. So here's the real reason Matt Fitzpatrick wasn't allowed to change his driver today at the BMW. The rule is written this way to counteract the spring effect or characteristic time rule, measuring ball speed with the driver, or basically how thin a driver face can be. A driver must be significantly damaged to be replaceable, which basically means cracked all the way through or caved in, collapsed completely. If pros were allowed to replace a driver with any sort of crack, manufacturers would build the faces as thin as legally possible. It is a roundabout way of controlling distance. Written this way, manufacturers have to build their drivers with a bit of a buffer zone so they don't crack more often. The thinner the face, the faster the ball comes off, the more often they would crack and be replaced with another one. Also pushed right up against the limit. Yes, I think it's ridiculous. Matt's driver was obviously unusable after he found the crack. I don't think it's a good rule either, but that's the reason. So, I mean, to me,
that's great. That's great intel from John. He is the best when it comes to understanding the rules and how they apply. Any question I have about the USGA and how they, how they practice their rules, in situations like this, he's definitely the guy that would know, and so that's good stuff.
It's helpful, and it's just, I think to me, it's more of like how did we arrive here? There's so much ongoing discussion, debate about equipment rollback, ball rollback, and it's how do we arrive at a place where the guy's using the club. Nose is clearly broken. He just hit a ball. He shows you it's broken. The best player in the world saying it's broken and we can't get it fixed. I just don't. It's just you kind of got to laugh at it a little bit.
Okay, let's say this happens at the Sony Open on a Thursday afternoon. I think the way this came across and why maybe Scottie and Fitzy were as adamant about wanting it changed as they were is that time and place, right? Like Fitzy's 3 under through 7 holes. Let's say he goes out and shoots course record 61 and vaults up the leaderboard and makes it to the Tour Championship. Now, let's say it's that Thursday afternoon at Sony. I don't think Scottie's going to bat for him quite as much.
No.
You know, I think it's just about, listen, he's got an opportunity to do something absurd, although like unlikely, but it just felt like in that situation with everything on the line for him to try to make the Tour Championship, of the timing of when it happened is frustrating if he had a backup driver in his locker. I mean, he ended
easily replaceable
because he bogeyed that par 5 8th hole. So
and that's like if you're going to go out and shoot the 61, definitely can't do it without a usable driver. Like it's not happening without a driver at the longest course in PGA Tour history. You know,
especially when you need driver at 14, you need driver. I mean, you honestly can get away with it a little bit because you don't need a ton of drivers on that golf course, but still just frustrating.
Absolutely, and interesting to see Scottie was a lot of emotion from Scottie in a lot of different ways this week.
It was kind of hostile between because we always have like Mark Duspavic on, and he was obviously going to bat for his rules committee, and then you got the pros like Kurt Byram and I that are on there. They're just saying like this is absolutely ridiculous. You know, we got the players out there that are complaining about it. Andres Gonzalez told me that Matt Every was on the call during that whole thing. And he's like, "Get him, boys, get him!" Like, you know, I just thought, man, I think it's frustrating when that happens, but you know, I think they have rules in place, and I understand that, but you don't have to agree with everything. And I think this is one of those instances.
You said it earlier, like John Wood's the rules guy, and even he's telling you, like, come on. This is a little absurd. So I just think also it's playing it forward with Scottie a little bit. There's a little bit of frustration, I think, on Friday or Saturday with the wedge shot he missed after taking a penalty drop. And I just wonder what type of Scottie we see this week back on Bermuda, you know, all those things. Although I'm very curious. We'll get into this a little bit later in the week on Wednesday when we have Andrew Green join. But just I'm curious to see how these greens are going to play with 13 weeks of time to grow in, because we saw
they're good. The grass is like the best part of the golf course. Talking to a couple of players that just came off.
Oh wow, fantastic! Because you know, it's obviously that can take time, but you know, just in terms of the firmness of the trueness,
they say they weren't like crazy firm and that the grass is the highlight of the property.
Well, there you have it. That's good news for Scottie Scheffler
and for the grass guys.
And for the grass guys. A couple grass guys up here.
Look at it. Does it not look perfect?
It looks primo. It looks so great. Primo. I went down there and had a little touch of the... I love this so much. We have the first tee markers are on what is normally the members' practice putting green here.
So
on
pure.
The first tee. It's so good.
Pure. I mean, driver off the deck?
They need to let you as like the last, like instead of the ceremonial first tee shot for the tournament, it should be like the last ball that gets hit after the final group plays on Sunday. Smylie comes up and just
had this many people
rips a DOD.
Right here, there either one of two things are happening. I'm either rolling it into the pond about 50 yards, chunking it, or I'm hitting some type of squealy like slice out to the right. Like there's just no way that
I thought you can't high eye it from a DOD. It's impossible.
It is possible. It is possible.
Just think about it. Just think about it. Or the organizers of the tournament, NBC, Smylie DOD as the last ceremonial
I just want to get
shot.
a Dan kayak at 17 of the players. That's all I ask.
Yeah, we have a mounting list of requests for the tour now. This is one of many. The last thing before, and we had a little drive-by Power 6 Minutes with Sam Burns. So we're excited to get to that conversation to talk a little bit about, you know, Tour Championship, his week that he just had at Castle Pines. But one more before we get there. Some comments earlier in the week that you and I both found interesting were the same sort of hypothetical question has been posed to a number of different pros now in these press conferences of you have Scottie Scheffler's year, won the Masters, won, I believe, 6 signature events, or maybe it's 5 in the Players, won a gold medal. Would you take that year, or would you take Xander Schauffele's year where he has 2 major wins? And most of the guys have said to this point, Scottie, until Justin Thomas says, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think I go with Xander's for 2 majors. Now, I'm wondering, does this lens change for him because one of those is in his hometown of Louisville? Like, is that part of the math for him? Is it, or is it?
No.
You don't think so?
I think players just, they value winning major championships. They know how difficult it is. I think that is why you hear a lot of players say, you know what, I think I would take Xander, but that doesn't mean that Scottie isn't going to win Player of the Year. I think he still is going to win Player of the Year. But that's a different debate, because I think Player of the Year versus which one would you take?
Sure.
I think most guys would probably say, I would take Xander Schauffele's year every single time, because the major championships is kind of what guys are, judged by when their career is over. So I think every player would probably lean that way. But I think when it comes to Player of the Year voting from the players and journalists, I think it's a no-brainer. Scottie Scheffler's had the best year.
I wonder I'd love for someone to ask Scottie that question. And again, like I know you're saying you're just thinking about it in a vacuum, but I really am thinking about it player to player, because it's interesting to hear JT say that, who has 2 PGA championships won. Those are the 2 majors he's won. So you're looking at, like, how am I completing my trophy cabinet, so to speak? And so you add another PGA championship, but it's also one that's in the hometown, so it's extra special, but you're also adding a claret jug. That's amazingly important and historic. But it is interesting that you're passing on a green jacket, whereas if you're Scottie, you already have a green jacket. Are you looking over at Xander's? You're saying, wait a second, I'd be one trophy short of a career Grand Slam if I had that PGA, had the Wanamaker, and had the claret jug.
I think I think he was viewing it just as a PGA Tour pro, not as somebody who already has 2 major championships. So I think the debate's pretty easy when it comes, when you separate which one would you take as a PGA Tour player and who had the best year. I think it's pretty simple. But I will say, I still, you always worry about that one college football team that starts their year, they lose week 1, and then they go on and just continue to win and win and win. And the teams that win the last games are the ones that you kind of remember the most. And I think with Xander Schauffele, if he goes on and wins this week, wins the Tour Championship, I think some people will kind of, their memory fades a little bit on how many wins Scottie's had, just his historic type of year. And they're like, you know what? Scottie won 2 majors, or Xander won 2 majors, and he won the Tour Championship. 2 majors. I mean, it's apples to apples a little bit when you start looking at it from that and the recency bias. Yeah,
I'm thinking back to last year where I was in the Victor Hovland camp at the end of the year, despite having no major wins, but he had no cuts missed, and he wins the last 2 playoff events.
Scottie won.
Model consistency. Scottie wins last year. Scottie had no majors last year.
And Rahm was up for it too, right?
There. Rahm had that insane tear at the beginning of the year, and then he wins the Masters. I think he had 4 wins to start the year.
If that tells us anything, that Scottie won last year
without a major,
or just like without all the wins that he had,
Yeah.
I think it's pretty obvious this year that in a similar, voting type system, that Scottie's the no-brainer. He's going to win.
I want to say the only time he finished outside the top 10 all year was the Open Championship.
Scottie last year?
Liverpool, yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it's insane. Truly insane stuff.
He was first time, I think, all year. I don't think Bennett's on the good sleeping cycle. Because I know that I said dad back is the only thing that's going to get Scottie Scheffler. I think the sleep cycle.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
That's a good point.
But man, he was on edge last week. And
it happens like that. We have a lot of dads out there listening and watching who know this game. You could be on the best sleep schedule ever, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait, what happened? Like I thought we were good. I thought we had sleep trained properly. So I'm buying stock on that theory.
He hit a ton of really good shots that typically would end up pin high that are just ending up in the worst spots. And you saw he hit in the water at 10, goes to the drop zone, and then hits it over the green. He said it was a backstop and it should have rolled back. In my notes, in my book, I wrote down flat right there. Yeah. So there was no backstop. There was nothing to bring that back. So I just felt like when I saw that reaction from him, just saying, how is that possible? I think that to me is, heading into this week, right? The Tour Championship.
Mm-hmm.
are we going to be able to kind of settle ourselves a little bit and kind of, not let our emotions get the best of us, because it's going to be a grind. It's probably not what Scottie feels like should be the situation, considering that the year that he's had, or at least having a bigger stroke lead, not only just Xander, but over the rest of the field, that I think he feels entitled and deserving of winning the season-long race for the FedEx Cup. And I think you can understand that from his perspective. But last week just felt like there was some frustration lingering still from missing putts in Memphis. And then ball striking being off last week, losing strokes in his iron game, which never happens.
Shocking, yeah.
So showing up this week, how fresh are we going to be? Is he going to get the right amount of sleep? It's going to be hot. It's going to be ups and downs, swinging of emotions. You're going to have probably periods where you're going to lose the lead. Can you, be able to win a golf tournament at the end of the week where you start the week winning? And it's like we've seen for a lot of golf tournaments, it's not easy, going wire to wire.
You just flashbang me. Like, I'm not even physically here anymore. I'm hundreds of miles away in Durham. My wife's maternity leave is over. The baby's crying. I'm trying to heat up some milk. It's not going fast enough. I feel for where Scottie is right now.
Who knows? We're just, we're playing the dad hypothetical game here.
Well, you love every moment of it, but it's also not always conducive to playing championship level golf. And that's okay too. He's a human being. But regardless, I think it's going to be very interesting to see those two go at it at the top of the leaderboard this week, because as we've said often, Xander is the East Lake Whisperer. And he's given away 2 shots to the best player in the world, but that is going to be a really fun matchup to watch all week long. And if you look down the board, we're going to get further into this on the other side of the break. There are some names there at the top. Yeah. Ludwig, just 5 strokes back of Scottie. Rory, who plays great here, 6 strokes back. So this thing could go any which direction, right out of the gate. I
think anytime I started a final round on Sunday and I was within 5 strokes of the lead, I always felt like I had a chance. So you're talking about guys with 72 holes left to play that are within 5 shots of the lead, or shoot, even 10 shots of the lead. I still feel like, it all depends on what those guys do at the top. They can run away and hide, or they can let this play out and, have a jam-packed leaderboard. But I think what comes to mind, Xander's played really well here, new golf course. Is he going to like it as much? And then Scottie, hey, maybe this is the changes at East Lake that he needed to kind of get over the hump and win his first tour championship.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of disappointment the past 2 years. Well, there's a guy who's 6 shots behind Scottie to start the day on Thursday at 4 under. He is 9th in the FedEx Cup currently, and that is Sam Burns, fellow LSU Tiger. And he's going to join us right now for what we're calling a Power 6, I guess. So looking forward to that. We'll hop in real quick and catch up with Sam after a great finish last week at Castle Pines, and then get right back to previewing the last event of the tour calendar this year at the Tour Championship. We are back on the Smylie Show, and we have like a little power hour, actually power 6 minutes around here.
Yes.
A power 6.
Everyone start their timers.
Yes. Start the timer. Start the timer. We go to 12:40. We got his whole team behind us. We're on the first tee at East Lake. These guys are about to go tee off. Sam, BMW Championship. You hit a bunker shot, and while it's flying in the air, you're probably thinking, oh gosh, what is my celebration about to be?
Walking up there, I was like, there couldn't be an easier bunker shot to make. It's straight up the hill, little right to left, and I hit it, and I was like, that looks perfect. And it landed, started going towards the hole, and like, oh my God, please do this right now. And then I think I just blacked out. The next thing I know, I looked up and I was laying down in the bunker, and I was like,
starfish.
What just happened?
Well, I'm curious, what's the best reaction meme or gif you've gotten from your friends of that shot? Because this was like JT at the Wyndham last year. It's like it was immediately took the internet by storm.
Yeah, my buddies have been sending some in the group text this morning. Carter actually sent one. It was like something like, when you're headed out of the office for the day and you get a bunch of emails all of a sudden. Looking back, that was probably a little dramatic, but it happened.
Some might say the week and finishing T2, that maybe happy hour had something to do with it. Just your perspective of being in the TV business, maybe?
Yeah, I'm 1 for 1. I think if I could have spent a little more time with you, I may have made a few more birdies on Sunday.
Yeah, maybe so.
But I guess we'll never know.
I was trying to, the optics on that, is it correct that Victor gave you the snack, but you didn't share any with Sam. Did you even get any of Victor's
Okay,
snack?
dry trail mix, by the way.
Yeah,
Was it
actually,
dry?
It was
What
stuck
was in the trail mix?
I ate some, and then I'm trying to do commentary,
looking
and
back,
I'm
I'm
like,
glad I
Sam, you're
didn't.
gonna have to pick this up, like choking over here.
Yeah, I'm glad I passed on the trail mix.
That's a no-go. What's your encore snack of choice?
I'll usually eat a Go Macro and then travel make like a almond butter and honey sandwich or something. I'll eat that.
Sounds
Yeah, it's nice.
delicious.
So this was the only question I forgot to ask during happy hour, and you and Scottie have shared houses most of the year, but the last 2 weeks y'all definitely have. And I started thinking about having a 7-month-old kid, which 7 months, is that about right?
We have four, and they're 3.5.
Wait. Okay.
Ours is four
I don't know.
months.
Okay, I'm further along than I
Yeah.
thought you guys were. But the question still stands. Do y'all have separate floors of the house? Because I'd be so worried about my kid keeping up another family.
Yeah, it's funny. We'll be sitting down there at night after we put them down, and we'll hear a baby cry, and we're like, "Is that yours or mine?" And then it'll
Dude,
be like,
are they on the same floor as the babies
"No,
then?
no,
Or are
yeah,
they...
we're usually on different floors."
Okay.
So then it's just a figuring out of which cry it is, and then you're like, I really hope it's yours. Most of the time it ends up being ours, and then you're like, all right, well, we enjoyed the 30 minutes we got to hang out, and we're going to bed.
We are a big-time dad pod, so I kind of want to unpack this a little bit. Favorite part of being a dad thus far? Most tedious dad task you wish you could just get rid of?
That's a great question. Favorite part, I think it's just coming home from like the golf course and just like every time he sees me or, when he wakes up, he just has the biggest smile on his face, and it's like the coolest thing ever. Most tedious. Everything that my wife has to do. She gets the brunt end of it for sure. Poop diapers sometimes, like blowouts in the stroller, they're just not fun. Stink, and there's just poop everywhere. And then he's at the point where he's like moving around, so like put his hand in it, or like his foot will get in it, and it's just.
That's a tough scene.
It's not great.
When they can start taking off their own diapers,
Yeah.
that's really fun.
Yeah.
Okay, that happened to Francie and Andy Carter this
Yes,
weekend. Apparently, she had a poopy diaper and just had whoop straight down,
Yep.
and then
Good luck.
that's your next phase. That's
Yeah.
coming right around the corner. Have you ever worked on your golf swing while rocking Bear to sleep?
Oh, 100%. I'll do a little backswing.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
okay.
100%, yeah.
I'm not the only guy to
Yeah.
like work on.
Or even get a little workout in, a couple squats in there, lunges. You just kind of figure out what to do, and it works.
All right, so last question's on the way out. Like you said, you're starting this week at 400 par at East Lake. We haven't seen this golf course. Have you had a chance to look at the visuals or any
I've
overheads?
looked at, I think Golf Digest did like an article, and they had like a couple of shots of it. But from my understanding, I think every green's different. So yeah, it's basically a brand new golf course for us. So I think it'll be good to get out and see it today.
And the final score of the LSU USC game Sunday night.
I'm gonna say 41-17.
Okay.
Ooh,
You're gonna
it's
need
big.
you.
Tigers, of
Go
course.
Tigers.
You're
Thanks
gonna,
for clarifying.
We're gonna lay the points.
No,
and
Smiler's just
take
gonna
the
be
Tigers.
sending it. He's
Yes.
gonna let it rip.
All right.
Love it.
Awesome. Hey, how'd we do? That's 5 minutes.
That's
Wow.
5 minutes. We got an extra minute back. So Sam Burns, 9th in the FedEx Cup, starting at 4 under this week, 6 back of your buddy Scottie Scheffler. Best of luck out there. Thanks
you.
for joining us.
Appreciate it. Thank you guys for
And
having
go
me.
Tigers.
Well, there you have it. Great little power 5 to 6 minutes with Sam Burns, and that's not where it's going to end, Smylie. We have a bonus Power 5. Do you want to tell the good people who we got?
X gonna
Throwing
give it
up?
to you.
Are you gonna throw it
give
up?
it to you. X gonna give it to you.
Xander Schauffele joins us now for another little Power 5 here on the First Seed East Lake. So let's just get right to that. All right, we're back with another little Smylie Show Power 5 now, second one of the day. We're joined by Xander Schauffele, second in the FedEx Cup standings, starting at 8 under heading into the week. Where are we feeling like we are state of the game coming off Castle Pines?
Yeah, it's nice to be back at ground level, I guess. way back down here. I guess we're still at 900 feet, but it's warm. It's East Lake, and everyone knows what's going on here. So looking forward to the week.
Xander, this golf course, everybody knows how much success you've had on this course, right? It's got to be a little frustrating to you showing up, just having to put the extra work in, because I imagine that you played a lot of shots and a lot of putts and chips just based off memory. Now you probably have to put in more work than you were expecting to coming into this week.
Yeah, I feel lucky. I got a really good caddy. I think these are the moments where he can shine, putting in that extra work, figuring out sort of lands. The course is young. I don't think this course is going to settle for another couple of years. And it being firm. It kind of makes me think of, Colonial almost, where it was the fairways were firm, the greens were firm, chipping was firm, the putts were kind of a little bit wobbly. So I think there's going to be a little bit of that. Memory is no longer a thing. I have good memories on this property, so
Yes.
a lot to draw from.
Well, you're used to kind of being out front. You're a guy who's always seems to be in that top 25, regardless of how good or bad you're playing. That's just how consistent you've been. And this tournament, in the way it's staggered, you and Scottie are out front. Is it very weird starting a tournament? You're 2 shots back. Does it feel like every day when you wake up, it feels like a Sunday?
Almost. I mean, I think you sort of, similar to other tournaments, you kind of tuck your head at first, and then even for the viewer, I mean, it's a little confusing to start, but once the race is going, it's sort of, we're up and going, and everyone's sort of sitting there on the board, and then it's a free for all at that point. So
Yeah.
I think you sort of start looking on the weekend where you're sitting.
I'm sure, Xander, you've seen the hypothetical the last couple of weeks of guys being asked, which resume would you take this year? Would you take Scottie's year? Would you take Xander's year? Are you amused at all by that? And I assume you're taking your own year, right?
Yeah, I'm proud of the work that I put in. I mean, I think it's there's been I've heard a little bit of the chatter around it. There's been a sort of mixed bag, and I think he should be proud and is proud of the work he put in. I'm proud of the work my team and I have put in this year, and whichever one you pick, I think it's just wherever you're at in your career.
Yeah. JT said he's going with your year.
Yeah, so I mean, he's been very vocal about chasing down majors and wanting that sort of legacy, and that makes sense. But if you're someone that hasn't won much on tour, I mean, shoot, you're not taking my year, you're taking Scottie's year. You know what I mean? You're knocking off all these all these big events, invitationals, players, Masters. So to each his own.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. And we very rarely see the top players in this event here on a Monday getting work done. Scottie Scheffler just hit his tee ball. Xander walks up. So, of course, Xander, I know you're about to get some work done, but the off season is in the horizon. And so do we have any vacations planned? What's the first cocktail being poured? I mean, I can imagine that it's been a long year. You're excited to have some time off.
Yeah, I mean, it feels weird to say this, but actually, I'm not looking forward to it, but I got my brother's batch party next week.
Oh, so whereabouts?
It's in Vegas.
Oh, wow.
There's a big group of guys, and
Heavens to Betsy.
it's gonna be a lot of fun. But thinking of being dehydrated and drinking and more tired than even after this week is something else. So we'll have to gear up for that one.
I'm excited to see him at circa at the pool with a cigar and floaties, just out there, just taking it all in.
Xander's cigar shots are kind of iconic, so
Yeah.
we might get a little bit of that. Look, last one before we let you go. We know you're teeing off right here, East Lake, the new and improved East Lake, really quick here. But you mentioned we're a dad pod. We're also a dog pod. Okay. You got the dogs in town this week, the French Bulldog, and what type of doodle was it?
Aussie Labradoodle.
Aussie Labradoodle.
Yeah.
So what are the dog activities look like this week? You can take pretty walks around Bucket?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, wherever we can. Fortunately, we're in a kind of residential area, so there's a little dog park there. Our girl doesn't get along with too many dogs. She's a little bit yappy, but the two of them love each other, and any bit of downtime I can. There's a lot of emotional support from the dogs and my wife, so it's a nice touch to the week.
Us guys, we're soft, but golfers are even softer. We need all the loving that we can get. We're thankful for the wives, for the dogs, and especially for the support team that you got all out there that are ready to watch you go try to tackle East Lake and win a tour championship. So, Xander, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Best of luck out there this week.
Thanks, boys.
Big thanks to both Sam Burns and Xander Schauffele for taking the time to join us here for a little quick ones before they teed off. They got to take a look at the revamped, the restored East Lake Golf Club for the first time, playing 9 holes, I imagine, today, checking out some of those refurbished greens and everything like that.
Just highlights from those 2 interviews. I mean, I thought, first off, the question you asked Xander about which season would you take, I was hoping he'd be like me, duh. Just kind of go all in on just us not knowing if he was serious or not serious type of deal. He answered it I'm obviously taking myself, but it'd been hilarious if he would have gone the route of, Scottie's season was terrible. My season's much better. And then just waiting to see if we ever caught on to the bit.
Or played totally counter and was like, obviously Scottie's here.
Yeah, no, it would have thrown us, but we would have both been just sitting ducks. We would have had no idea what to do.
That's a question you obviously tiptoe into, but he handled it very well.
Yes.
And I thought it was interesting to hear the thought process where if you're majors focused, kind of like we discussed leading into it, you probably take my year. And if you're trying to build a career resume and get some tour wins, probably makes sense to take Scottie's. I think it's most interesting, and I'd love to ask this question to Scottie as well, to hear the thought processes behind the guys who were part of the conversation, but not actually being asked the question. So
Right.
it's kind of fun to get that. And then of course, Sam Burns' dad stuff. I mean, just so good.
It's so good. I was happy to ask him about the different floors of the house because
Which baby is it?
which
Which baby's crying?
I just know for myself, anytime we've stayed at a house with other people, we just don't want to keep anybody up.
Totally.
We're fine being up, but we don't want to keep anybody else up because of our baby. So I just think that they're the same timeline of when they've had their kid. I think it's great.
My wife she freaks out when we have company at our house and the baby's crying.
Yeah.
Like, Amanda, we've invited these people here. Like, I think they probably know that
You know what
a
you
crying
sign.
baby might be.
There's a waiver at the door you sign, and you know what you're in for.
There's not a waiver at the door. There's actually a little sign up that says, "Please don't ring the doorbell. Just leave
Please
it and
don't
text
ring the
us."
doorbell and pardon our mess.
Yeah, well, it's again, like, I love the stuff that and with Xander talking about his dogs. Like, I love the human stuff.
Did we
And
catch a name? Did he say
He
names?
didn't get names on the dogs, but French Bulldog and an Aussie Doodle. And I don't know, one of the two of them has trouble with other dogs, which, listen, my baby girl, Nora, she's my driver head cover. She's in the same boat. Love her to death.
Hate that.
She gets on great with our lab, but she just doesn't, other dogs, just it's not really her scene.
We got
That's
a
okay.
golden man. Like, have you ever met a golden that hadn't gotten along with another dog?
They don't exist.
They
I
don't
think.
exist.
They don't exist. You show me an attack golden.
Yeah.
I don't think that happens.
Is that a golden on your hat?
I guess it is.
Kind of looks like a golden.
I guess it is. Yeah, it's got the little kind
Yeah.
of furry fur. I think a lab wouldn't have the fur. Yeah, how about that?
Yeah.
Full circle. Where is this a golf podcast? Where
It
were
is
we?
a golf podcast. And
President's Cup. Anybody?
yes.
So here's where we're at on President's Cup. So this was obviously, as we kind of led into the week, this was the cutoff for automatic qualification for both the American and international teams. And so the six that qualified on both sides. So for Team USA, Scottie Scheffler, almost said Scottie Schauffele. Scottie Scheffler, Xander Schauffele, Colin Morikawa, Wyndham Clark, Patrick Cantlay, Sahith Theegala. On the international side, Hideki Matsuyama, Sung J M, Adam Scott, Tom Kim, Jason Day, Ben On.
Sat next to Ben on in the flight yesterday.
He's a funny dude, isn't he?
Funny dude, yeah.
He's got a great former Cal Bear.
It felt like he was kind of my helper, like next to me, because I couldn't
Okay.
figure out any of the plugs, and I just felt like I was asking him 1,000 questions on my setup and seat and making
Yes.
sure that I could get everything organized. So thank you, Ben On.
Yeah, we're not a plain accessories podcast, so thanks for that, Ben On. Here's the interesting sort of wrinkle here when we're kind of looking at what the picks could be, and those are coming this next week, right? Like I think the Tuesday after the Tour Championship. So Keegan is now 10th on that President's Cup points list. Like, I mean, it's cut off now, but that's where he moved with the win of the BMW Championship. He is currently an assistant captain on that team. So the question is, do you take Keegan as a playing captain? Because here's the list from 7 to 12. Sam Burns was 2 weeks ago outside of the top 12. He was 13th. He's now 7th. Then you have Tony Finau, Russell Henley, Keegan Bradley, Brian Harman, and Max Homa. Brian Harman and Max Homa at 11-12 are obviously not playing here at East Lake. If you go further down that list, you have a group of guys who are past that top 12 but who are playing this week. That includes Chris Kirk at 13, Akshay Bhatia at 14, Billy Horschel at 17, Tom Hoagie at 18, and Justin Thomas at 19. So starting with just that American side, how are you seeing this next week or so shake out? And do you think that group of guys who are outside the top 12 with a good week here kind of force their way in the door?
I think you just set the table really nicely there. I think it's kind of obvious to me that there's a couple shoe-ins that you pick. The way Sam Burns has been playing and the way Tony Finau have been playing. To me, those two guys are just no-brainers. It feels like to me that it'd be really difficult for Jim Furyk not to pick Keegan Bradley just with the backlash, him being in the room. I think you kind of get to see both sides of it. And personally, I think we all want to see Keegan play.
Do you think, and not to interrupt you, but just quickly on the Keegan thing, because I'm interested, think there's a world where Keegan lobbies to not be picked so he can gain more captain experience ahead of the Ryder Cup? That's an insane line of thought.
Your whole goal as a professional golfer is to make as many of these teams as possible.
Okay.
Being an assistant captain, the role is very minute as far as like what you can do on the golf course. The only guy that can give advice is the captain. So you really are just out there just being a good support system, and you're just getting to watch, really. So when you get to be inside the ropes and playing, I think there's nothing that beats that. And this isn't to say that these captains aren't on numerous calls, trying to figure out the stats, talking to these players, trying to talk to the captain. There is tons of roles that go into making these teams. So I'm not trying to diminish what these assistant captains do. But if you're Keegan, you're not turning down the opportunity to represent the USA and, to potentially, who knows? I know he's the one picking, but if he goes out and is undefeated at the President's Cup, it's a nice resume builder for him going into next year.
Can we see a playing captain at Bethpage?
Could he be a playing captain at Bethpage? That would be epic.
Can you imagine? I mean, that would truly be some next level stuff. This is a tough one here because this guy has been one of the most consistent performers the last two competitions on the American side, both at Quail Hollow and at a Rome in a losing effort. Max Hulme. What do you do with Max at 12? Because he'd probably be the first guy to tell you his game's just not where he wants it to be right now. Do you take him and hope he kind of snaps into form?
So the way I look at it with Max, the President's Cup is basically a month from today. Maybe not quite. I think it's the 26th is when the week starts, I think.
Yeah, just about. Yeah,
so
about right.
30-ish days away for when they tee it up at Royal Montreal. I truly do believe that Max, his issue has been off the tee, working through swing changes with Mark Blackburn, working his tail off, and sometimes it just like trying to make these changes that he's trying to make and then going to play competition, it can be very overwhelming, especially at a golf course like last week where you got White Soldier, OB stakes on both sides of the fairways. And once it gets your head a little bit, you start overthinking, you start steering the golf ball. So there's a potential that this golf course at Royal Montreal, which I know nothing about, it could be an open property with no out of bounds. And it could be a golf course that really favors iron players. Well, at one point last week, he was gaining 5 strokes on his iron play and was losing 11 strokes off the tee. He was the best iron player in the field and the worst driver.
Wow.
So there is a situation for Max Hulme if you look at the stats and say, you know what, we can hide his driver a little bit. He has a month to get it better, and we'll put him in a situation to where if it's alternate shot, like we know like this is the tee shot he'll be able to hit, or ain't no OB, he can go out and swing it, because the rest of his game is good. It's just, I think getting into an overwhelming atmosphere where you get the stimulation is going to be through the roof as far as just being able to settle and calm your nerves, right?
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, it's the most you ever feel. And so you'd like to not be thinking about technique quite as much in those moments, which then you start to look at other guys. You're like, you know what? If I'm Max, I'd be worried about the guys that you mentioned that are on the outside that are here. Chris Kurt, Akshay, Billy Horschel, Tom Hoagie. And I think Justin Thomas is a huge opportunity this week because I do feel like I still think he's going to get picked, but he's got to play well this week.
Yeah.
Like if he goes out and is able to do kind of what Keegan did last week, which is it'd be nice obviously to go win. So
winning helps.
I guess what I mean by that is that like what did Keegan Bradley and Adam Scott do last week? They got over the hump of making it to the BMW Championship and were able to play free. I think with Justin, and he's been open with us about this, that sometimes his expectations just get too high for himself, that he kind of gets in his own way a little bit. I think this week he's going to have a really good week. And the reason why is for that. I think his expectations are going to be lower. He's got nothing to lose. All he can do is just help his case and the recency bias of, Well, Justin Thomas started the week even par 10 shots back and finished top 5 in the FedEx Cup. I don't see how you leave him off the team. That's the argument he's going to try to make, while other guys like Max Homa, and who's the other one that's going to be sitting at home?
Brian Harmon.
And Brian Harmon. So JT sneaking past Brian Harmon, giving himself another opportunity to show what he's got, I think it's important.
So you're saying there's a chance?
Oh, 100%.
Did you get that one? Or
Yeah, if you haven't seen Justin Thomas's Instagram post today, go check it out. His social media team needs to raise. On fire
done.
with the Creed, Take Me
They're
Higher
killing it.
last
They're killing
week
it, yeah.
in Denver. So good work.
I think the Creed thing might have been. Do you see Gardner Minshew posted a shirtless workout video to Creed Take Me Higher? Creed making a comeback. I'm a huge Creed guy.
Some Creed. I love me some Creed. But I think of those guys past Max Homa, so the 5 guys that I mentioned all have an opportunity this week to kind of put their stamp of, hey, this is the type of form I'm in. Because I do worry again that the President's Cup is going to be a lot of these players' next start. I really don't think you're going to see too many of these guys go all the way out to Napa.
Yeah.
I think that's something that the PGA Tour's always been, like, starting the year in Napa. Great. Or, or at least starting the fall out in Napa. I wish they were a little bit more strategic in trying to make it more favorable for these guys to be able to have a start.
If only there was like a team competition that you could move to the fall and a fun city to visit that, people would enjoy hanging out and doing.
Well,
I don't know how you're going to figure that one out.
Just think about this. What did the USA basketball team do in their preparation? They they take them to a place that they know they're going to have a good time in Vegas. Yeah. Like, they're not unhappy to be there. So, like, make them go to a place where New Orleans.
Zurich, please do it. Please move it right. I think people, really and truly, I'm only being halfway facetious. Like, I think people would care maybe even more about the Zurich as a fall event if it was billed as the lead up to whatever team competition is happening that year. I really, really do.
I know the captains would like to see it, so their decisions are a little bit more, like, oh, well, that didn't work out. Let's try these guys together next week.
Yeah, 100%. One more on the U.S. team, not on the list of the guys we've talked about. If you have one wild card pick, who is it?
Nick Dunlap.
I like that. I think so too. I think he's the one guy that probably
he didn't help himself on Sunday shooting 5 over because I felt like he was in a position to play his way here to Eastlake. I think maybe if he shoots 3 or 4 under, he had an opportunity to play his way here. And I really felt like if he made it to the Tour Championship, that there was a good chance he got picked. I think he's much more on the outside looking in. When you look at the standings, he's not even in the top 25.
Yep.
He hasn't had any major success, but he sure has had some dang good success over the last 16 months. Really, just his whole amateur career. Let's be real.
Well, yeah, and I think you made a great point. We talked to him in Memphis about like the match play record is amazing.
It's amazing,
and I think it's another one where like we just have to go unpack Royal Montreal a little bit, right, and figure out what type of course it is and who it suits, because that could really impact the picks you're making.
My whole thing is, if this is a year in which I don't think this team is as like strong as like some of the other teams that have been out in the past. You've had when Dustin Johnson, Brooks Koepka at the height of their powers, and then you throw in Scottie, Xander, Morikawa. Like when that team and Jordan and JT and all these guys are at their peaks of when they're playing their best golf, that to me was the strongest the U.S. team has looked. I mean, Sahith Theegala finished last week at BMW. We're not coming in like with the most, we got Scottie and Xander obviously, but just the fact that I think this team will definitely need a little bit of experience and just guys that have been in the room. Mm-hmm. So that's where I start to think about a guy like Nick Dunlap. I just don't think he'll make the team because of that reason.
Yeah, no, it's a fair one. To flip over to the international side, we obviously read you the list of automatic qualifiers, but 7 through 12 there: Corey Connors, Min Woo Lee, Cam Davis, Seabez, Christian Bezaden now. I'm strictly calling him Seabez at this point. Nick Taylor and Adam Hadwin. Mm-hmm. Now,
this is really difficult.
Here's the interesting thing about this one. So, of the automatic qualifiers, 4 and 5, Tom Kim and Jason Day are not here in Eastlake. Of the 7 through 12 lists, none of them are in Eastlake except for Bezaden out. And then you go to 13. Taylor Pendrith is the one guy who is here
11th.
this week playing for the Tour
now.
Championship. Oh, is that okay?
Yeah, jump to 11.
So there you go. So you have more updated than me. So Pendrith playing this week. So that I assume do you now have Taylor 12th and Hadwin 13th?
Yep.
And that's an interesting one too, because you have, and then I believe you have Mackenzie Hughes at either 15 or 16.
You're 15.
So this is where I think the decision becomes an intriguing one for Mike Weir, who understandably, you have a President's Cup in Canada. You probably want to take as many Canadians as possible, but now you have to use picks on all of them. You got to use a pick on Corey Connors. You got to use a pick on, Pendrith, now that he's at 11th, Nick Taylor and Adam Hadwin, Mackenzie Hughes, and you're bumping some good players. Like Bazane Now's had an incredibly strong year. De facto won the Amex, where Nick Dunlap won as an amateur, right? Like, got all the points for that. You'd have to bump either Minwoo Lee or Cam Davis, who are phenomenally talented players who are developing. You probably want to keep having them on teams. So that one I think is going to be intriguing in terms of how he's going to do his picks.
It seems kind of obvious to me that Corey Connors is a no-brainer. He's making the team. I still feel the same way about Cam Davis. He's a guy that he's not going to be left off that team. He's too talented. He can hit it with just about anyone as far as his ball striking goes. I don't see how he gets left off. I think Minwoo Lee not making it to the BMW Championship is a big deal. The fact that he's going to be sitting at home and just letting a guy like Christian Bezaden, who is a spot behind him in the standings, not that it matters now, but keeps being able to, update his resume. And I think it showed a lot last week, seeing Christian, literally being outside looking in and then making 4 birdies in a row on the back 9 to play his way into the Tour Championship. I'd be hard-pressed to see him not on the team. It's the Canadian trio that surprised me in that next bunch, which is Pendrith, Nick Taylor, and Adam Hadwin. Mm-hmm. I really felt like coming into the year that Taylor Pendrith wasn't going to be on the team. Like, if you had to rank the Canadian players that I felt like were going to be on it, I didn't think Pendrith was going to be the guy. But he's played really well and is in really nice form, won in Byron Nelson. I just think the clutch gene of Nick Taylor keeps him on the team. So I think guys like Adam Hadwin, Minwoo Lee are guys that are on the outside looking in. And if you're looking at one other guy who's going to – I just see his experience playing in President's Cups and just his overall ball striking ability. I don't see how Siwoo Kim's not on the team.
Yeah, he's another guy on the outside, and he's on the outside of 12 looking in.
Yeah, I still think that Siwoo, like when you look at, if you look at just general stats of what these guys are able to do with the golf ball and just raw data, kind of how we do with Aaron Rye, Siwoo Kim is the guy that his numbers they jump off the page. And I think that a lot of these captains, they use stats and analytics to be their guy to pick these teams. It'd be really hard to pass on Siwoo.
I just have a hard time believing that you'd leave a Minwoo Lee at home with all the talent he has. He didn't make the last team at Quail Hollow. Obviously, it was a little bit of a different situation there. But to not make that team, everyone, we remember at the beginning of the year, we talked to Trevor Immelman about all the talent Minwoo has and how he'd like to have a guy like this on the international team. To not only miss out on signature events this year by way of not making it in the top 50 and making it the BMW Championship, and then to not make this team would just be a crushing blow for one of the more marketable young superstars, or maybe not a superstar yet, but trending in that direction, a star with a ton of talent. It would just be really, really tough to leave that guy off the team.
Yeah, he had. I'm just sitting here looking at his results. He had a second at the Rocket Mortgage, and he had a second at the Cognizant Classic. Other than that, his best finish is T21. It looks like.
Yeah.
So nothing inside the top 20 other than those 2 weeks. So
but
just
he only got into one signature event. You know what I mean? It's like that
let's just put that aside. He's playing against what we would call weaker fields and wasn't able to get a top 20 besides just 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You know what? I think just the overall consistency of just getting a little bit better.
Yeah.
I could see why he'd be left off the team.
It's going to be an interesting one. Some tough decisions to make, but kind of to your point, it's not like the most bulletproof U.S. team that we've ever seen. So it'll be. We don't
know what the golf course is like either. It could be a good Minwoo Lee fit. You could go and just look at a course profile and say, you know what? If I'm looking at Minwoo Lee and I see that, we need driving distance this week. Okay, well, Minwoo Lee's probably getting picked. He's a good putter, good short game. His iron game is the one thing that kind of feel like is not the strength of his game that he needs to keep improving on.
So those picks is Tuesday after the Tour Championship. So we will be making our own guesses on the Monday after the Tour Championship and seeing how it all shakes out. But I mean, I think that's about all for today's show. We're excited for our Wednesday show, also here on site at East Lake. Some other special guests joining us. Should have Andrew Green on to preview the golf course, and then we got a couple tour pros in the works. We'll see how that whole thing shakes out. But as we always do, Smylie, any final thoughts here from the first tee? This turned out to be a winner of a location.
Winner of a location. I just want to give a shout out to the boys last week. Brian behind us here in ATL.
Yeah, huge
Brian
shout out.
Stansfield, Jackson Brown back home. And then unfortunately for Jackson to introduce Culver's and the Butterburgers to Charlie.
We're gonna get into this, yeah.
That's something that I feel like needs to be noted, because now, as we were coming up with nicknames for everybody, Charlie, you're the Butterburger.
I'm the big Butterburger. I'm the triple B.
You're
the big Butterburger.
When we're playing,
Brian's a big plum. He's still rocking his Plum Creek hat back there, which I hope, Brian, I hope you wear that to every single production you work on for the Smylie Show. You are the big plum now. I feel it down to my plums.
big plum, and then
I'm the Butterburger.
The Tobacco Road, you're the Butterburger.
I'm the Butterburger. I'll say this. If anyone out there is listening that lives in the Midwest or they work for Culver's, sponsor us, please, because your cheese curds are to die for. So this is kind of how the week went for Culver's. I think I've shared some of this with you, maybe not all of this. So Jackson is born and raised in the Midwest, played football for North Dakota State, and we pull up to our hotel, and there is a Culver's right across the street. So we're going to the course. He said, "Have you ever eaten at a Culver's?" I said, "No." What's the deal with that? He's like, "You've never eaten at a Culver's. We have to go." So we get back on that first day, and Brian and Jackson and I go to Culver's. He's like, "All right, this is what you got to do. You got to do a Butterburger with the works. You got to sub in cheese curds for fries, and you got to get the Culver's root beer." And I'm telling you, like, top 5 fast food meal I've ever had in my entire life. Like, just rocked my socks. So we leave, and it's on my mind, right? So then Brian and I, of course, the whole crew gets out, plays golf at Plum Creek on Tuesday, and we get back, and we're trying to kind of find some time for lunch. I'm like, "Brian, what do you think about hitting Culver's again?" He's like, "Seriously?" I'm like, "Well, it's right here. Save us some time." He's like, "All right, we'll do Culver's again." So this time I go back, another Butterburger, another cheese curds, another root beer, but I also got a little, the concrete mixer, I believe they're called. It's like a little ice cream, and I think I got the Oreo peanut butter mix, which was,
sounds amazing. That sounds pretty good.
It was unbelievable. I will say, I was trying to eat it really quick before we got in and out and went back to the course, and I only finished 2/3 of it. It was just powering through it, and I got to the elevator, and I was like, I don't think I can do the last third of this thing. So I threw it away. So then we get on with our last production on Wednesday, and it's a late night, of course.
Did you go back?
We went back a third time to Culver's, and we walk in, and the guy who was there the first night goes up. He's got a smile on his face. He says, "So you guys liked it, huh?" And I was like, "Yeah, we came back yesterday too." He's like, "No way." He's like you got to be kidding me. And it's like, yeah, three days in a row, Culver's. So that day I did the spicy chicken sandwich, which was also amazing. Stuck with the cheese curds, stuck with the root beer, but did something a little different there. Culver, this has just been like a 2 to 3 minute commercial for Culver's. If you're in the Midwest, I envy you. Please bring them to North Carolina. I'd love to eat them there. But yeah, I am the big Butterburger after this week.
So Charlie wants Culver's to sponsor the pod, but I also think with that needs to come Tums. I think Tums or any anti-acid company should also be a sponsor along with Culver's, and they're a part of the same read. And they just got to know it's a combo package that they're buying into.
And then maybe some sort of a fitness company, so I don't balloon, because I'm either going to be I'm either gonna cut it all out this off season and show up 15 pounds lighter for the Players Championship, or I'm gonna be 300 pounds.
Can you imagine this package that we're gonna send over to Culver's, Tums, and then also that we're gonna send over to, oh god, man, what would be the third one?
I mean, we've got so many directions. Should we get into? Are we going to save valet tipping for another show?
Yeah, we'll save that for another show. We've gone too far off the deep end.
Here's what I'll say, and we'll wrap this show, is that we've had a lot of fun these last 3 weeks. I'm kind of sad to see it come to an end, but it's been fun to be at all 3 FedEx Cup locations, eating Culver's and debating as to how you tip a valet for cars.
Yeah, that's a conversation for another day. But I'm about to go drive around the golf course, go check it out. I mean, it's a beautiful day here. You know, I would say it's probably 80 degrees in here with a light breeze. So excited to go check it out.
A lot like our Monday in Memphis. So
yeah.
We appreciate you watching and listening as always, and hope you come back to check out Wednesday's episode. We'll talk to you then.
You know, I listen to this podcast. It's really cool. And
all of our local fans and subscribers, but make sure you like and subscribe.
It's cool to see what you guys are doing. I know golf fans appreciate it, but we do too, so please keep it up.
For all the good people at YouTube, like and subscribe.
You guys have some good takes, so I'm happy to come on and shoot the